Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming and welcome for the mentor and the mentees to Design Camp collaboration between HDII Jakarta and AHEC, supported by HIMKI and HDPII Jakarta. I also want to say congratulations for the chosen students and young proficient designer from interior and furniture design. Today is our first classroom with mentor session of Design Camp with Jarrod Lim. I hope we're going to get a lot of ideas and inspiration about interior and furniture from Mr. Lim. Mr. Lim is a design director at Jarrod Lim Design in Singapore. He began his career working with luminary Patricia Urquiola in Milan and for iconic furniture brand SCP in London. His eponymous design studio launched in Singapore in 2011, and he currently designs for the likes of Herman Miller, Royal Selangor, and Ocean Hotels. Mr. Lim develops creative concept for furniture and special design for interiors, exhibition, and public locations. His focus is on the experiential and instinctive interaction between everyday objects and the surrounding environment and the familiar settings. Mr. Lim is renowned for his constant regard for the surrounding environment, responsible for material use and high quality production, and also excellence in final design outcomes. Okay, before we start, I'm going to remind the participants you can ask a question to Mr. Lim in the chat box, and I'm going to read it in the question and answer session. And don't forget to fill the attendance form. And without no further ado, please welcome Mr. Lim.
Hey, hello. I hope everyone can hear me okay. Yeah. So I think if there's a question that's sort of applicable to a particular picture or something, then maybe you can just interrupt me and you know, it's easier to answer it on the spot, I think. Yeah. So anyway, hi everyone. Thanks for joining and congratulations to all of the people for being selected for this project. So welcome to your first class, I guess. So as they mentioned, I'm Jarrod, the director. I've got my own studio in Singapore and I've been operating here for over 10 years now. And I work on all sorts of different design projects from for mostly furniture, but interiors, graphics, basically whatever projects come my way. So let me share my screen and we can get started. Okay, can everyone see this? I hope so. Yeah. Okay. So basically, yeah. Today I was basically going to talk to you a bit about how you can approach this design project. So in particular, sort of some of the different ways that you can think about designing with wood. So, I mean, in the end, there's definitely like no one correct way of answering the final question, you know, how do I approach this project? But it's more about, you know, how are you planning to explore and think about, you know, how you make these decisions and why you're making these decisions on these designs. So I'm sure you're all very familiar with wooden furniture, wooden interior products, and but maybe, you know, you've always looked at it from the same perspective. So I think it's sort of important to try and look at things from a different point of view, or just to think about things in a different way. So, so basically, from what I've read, you've got a completely open brief, well, almost completely open, and you don't really have that many constraints. So I think this gives you a lot of freedom, but also it can kind of make it difficult to come to like a solid conclusion or like a solid final proposal. So since you don't have any, you know, specific constraints, then I think you need to kind of give yourself some goalposts, because otherwise, if you don't sort of have any goalposts or guidelines, it's kind of difficult to know whether your design is heading in the right direction or whether it's sort of successful in what you're aiming to do. So I think, and that's basically giving yourself some goalposts and a goal is the only way you can justify your decision-making process. So at the end, when someone asks you, why did you do this? Why did you plan to, make it this way? You can explain, well, I set myself this task of doing this type of design or aimed at this sort of person. And then, that's why I did it that way. So, which means basically your point number 2 is starting to imagine yourself designing for a client essentially, or a customer or somebody, whether it's a company or for a specific type of situation. I mean, it could be a restaurant or a hotel lobby or something like that. But basically this imaginary client kind of needs to be in your mind when you're thinking about your design. So, you would be questioning yourself, will they like this design? Will it work for them? Does it fit with their requirements? Does it do what they need to do? And basically, these are the questions that, the judges should be thinking about or will be asking you when they're assessing your design. As in, if you were to say, I designed this table for a restaurant, what's specific about this table that makes it more suitable for a restaurant than, say, for somebody's house? What are the requirements of a restaurant table versus, a table at home? So, yeah, essentially that's what's happening. Why did you design it that way is the question you'll have to keep asking yourself and keep answering. So, so that's basically a design decision that's driven by what would be your client. Then point number 3 is trying to find a problem to solve or create one. Since you haven't been given a problem to solve, you basically have to create your own. So this could, it could be a big problem or a small problem, or, anything can be considered a problem. But again, this informs your decision-making process when you're thinking about this design. So, for example, let's say at this imaginary restaurant you're designing for, that when you're eating there, there's nowhere to put your bag, as in the tables are full, all the chairs are full, and there's nowhere to put your bag. So, the restaurant could offer some sort of bag holder, some sort of a bag holding device, I don't know, and different solutions to this problem will work for different types of restaurants. So that's why you need to kind of have a specific type of restaurant in mind, I guess, for this particular problem. So yeah, but at least this gives you a place where you can start and work on your design and say, oh, okay, this particular restaurant would have this type of solution or need this type of solution. And then the final point I've just put here is that looking at the materials and processes from different angles and a different perspective is something that I think it's important to consider all of the qualities and the possibilities of the material when you're starting a new design. And it gives you a new starting point where you can, come up with something different that people don't expect, basically. So in this case, you're starting off with wood, specifically American red oak. But I'll discuss sort of these points and as we go along a bit further. So let's keep going. So this is a little bit about me. This is basically my little studio in Singapore. So it's just a photo from outside. And as I said, we work on a large variety of projects, from furniture, interiors, all sorts of different things. And I ended up working quite a lot with wood. It wasn't really sort of something I said, I love wood so much, I have to work with wood. But it just kind of happened because, moving to Singapore and working with a lot of Indonesian factories and They have a lot of wooden material, and basically a lot of the factories are geared towards construction of wooden products. So yeah, so it kind of ended up just, I did a lot of work with wood, and then I met with AHEC, and so I've been working with them for almost 10 years now. So since then I've learned a lot about wood in general and the production process, and I've actually come to like it more and more as a material. So I just wanted to show you a few different projects. Some are from me, some are from other designers, and I'll try and let you know sort of the thought process of the ones, especially the ones that I designed, and hopefully give you a perspective on how you can approach your own projects or look at it in a different way. So this is an early project I did quite a long time ago, which was actually inspired by Singapore. When I first moved to Singapore, they have a lot of these gates around, which when I grew up in Australia, we didn't have big giant gates everywhere. So I thought it was quite strange. So I just thought it was really cool, actually, and then decided, how can I use this to turn it into something special? So I just kind of used that pattern and to create sort of this range of outdoor furniture. And then I felt that it was really harsh looking, so I decided to, in this case, add wooden slats to the seat, just to make it a bit warmer and a bit more inviting. So it's not really like a specific sort of wood related design, but just the first one. So yeah, so since then I've designed a lot of small objects, tableware and things like that. But this is a part of a collection of tableware I did for a company in Malaysia called Royal Selangor, and they're specialists in pewter, which is the metal, which has very specific properties as well. And one of the things, like when I first went to meet them, we were working on this, these ideas. I was showing them the ideas I wanted to do. And it was a simple comment that someone made about, the pewter always scratches the table. And we had already thought about, adding other materials to the pewter to make it more interesting rather than everything just being metal. So yeah, so I suggested, we can, normally they just add stoppers to the bottom of the products, like a rubber stopper. And so this time I said, I'd like to design the stopper into something that's actually part of the design rather than just adding, rubber base. And so in the end, it turned out, we added American walnut to all of the designs, which started off as just the little stopper at the bottom of the products. But in the end, I kind of made it integral to the entire design. And actually the amount of wood in the collection grew. So it started off as, a few small bits of wood at the bottom of the items, which then grew to be, quite large sort of pieces of wood with less metal on top. So, this was sort of, just an inspiration for a design that came about from a small problem that the company had, which was, the pewter always scratches the table. So this was another product I did, which wasn't aimed at any particular customer, but it was designed for the Singapore national celebration for 50 years of independence. And so at the time I was thinking like, why, what's special about Singapore and what do people love? And everyone was sort of very nostalgic and looking towards history. And so I found these old playgrounds actually. So these are some really old playgrounds in Singapore. So I was taking the shapes from these old playgrounds and thinking how I could turn them into products that people could buy. So that's basically what I did. So it's actually become quite an iconic product in Singapore. So, and I actually made one for the Prince of Bhutan, and we sent it over to him. So, oops, okay. But actually, the design of this dragon was not. It doesn't look difficult, but it was actually quite difficult to produce. So although the inspiration was really quite straightforward, a lot of the design decisions were sort of driven by production requirements, I guess you'd say. Oops. But yeah, looking at a rocking horse again, I've done 2 rocking horses. So this particular rocking horse was designed sort of in a completely different way to the other one, in which I was trying to basically come up with a product that revolved around like touch and sense and feeling rather than just how it looked. So it was all about sort of taking this idea of a rocking horse and then trying to reduce the shape to something that's very, very basic, but something you could still feel that's an animal. So it was more like a rocking animal. And then actually the material became more important than the form of the product. So I was quite happy with sort of how it came out, because everyone really loves to touch it and sort of play with it and stuff. So it's actually been quite good. So let's keep going. So yeah, so I've also worked on quite a lot of interior projects. So this is one where I worked with Patricia Urquiola. So previously I'd worked with her in Milan, and when I left and came to Singapore, she actually won the project to design this interior for this hotel. So she asked me to come and sort of represent her in Singapore. So I worked on this for almost 3 years. So yeah, so this one, as you can see, the hotel is all about sort of outdoors, greenery, gardens. So, and it's quite strange because the lobby and all of the waiting areas, the seating areas are all outdoors. So the only air-conditioned areas are the rooms. So actually everything's quite, well, not hot, but quite breezy. So we kind of wanted to keep it that way. So as we were moving through the design, you can see we've tried to keep it really open, really sort of garden-like. And then when you actually come indoors to create warmth in the room, but still bring that sort of outdoor feeling into each of the rooms. So we switched sort of the material selection from sort of a lot of ceramics, metals, stone to wood, obviously. So this is one of the rooms. And so this is American oak. And so yeah, it gave us this very warm, inviting feeling in the room. But we still tried to maintain this sort of outdoorsy, breezy feel with the grills and cutting the patterns into all of the wood. So I think it worked out pretty well. So yeah, it's actually won quite a lot of awards, this hotel, and the building itself. So yeah, we also did a few sort of larger rooms, which with darker wood, just to give them sort of more opulence, I guess. So I've also worked on the design of interior of a boat, which is this is a fishing boat turned into a surf touring boat, I guess you'd call it. So surfers can go on this boat for like a week or 2 holiday, and it travels around the Mentawai Islands, so just off Java, and takes people surfing. So I was basically asked to renovate. It had some rooms and things, so we renovated all the rooms. So designing a boat interior is kind of like designing a hotel interior, but the problem is none of the walls are square. So you're cutting everything to funny shapes and trying to make everything sort of fit. So but yeah, again, we sort of focused on the functions. It's very noisy inside a boat, so we tried to, like, put padding on all the walls everywhere, and generally make it quite luxurious inside. so so that's a few of my projects, just looking at that. But on to your project. So just to sort of discuss about ways that you can think differently, I guess, about your project. So I'll give you a few ideas. Is the first one is re-looking at your material. So essentially, you've been given timber to work with, and one of the reasons sort of I've been happy doing work with AHEC and working with timber manufacturers is that they truly sort of understand their material and they appreciate their material. So, and I think they also appreciate that I'm happy to look at the material in various different ways and sort of adjust their perspective as well. So, yeah. So as, going back to, the olden days, I guess, we've obviously been living with wooden products for a long time. And we've refined sort of this process of construction with wood. But some of this sort of process has been lost with the invention of sort of better fastening materials, better glue, better or cheaper techniques of joining the wood together. So, but when we see sort of this old Japanese style joinery, we still admire it, and we still value, the way that they did it, and the understanding of the craftsmen who were working with no tools and things like that. So, but what we also sort of can understand is that they knew what they were doing, which is why all their products have lasted so long. So it gives us this kind of feeling of quality craftsmanship. So actually you can see in this picture, everything's really old, except right at the very top, there's a new piece being added. So I think it's quite interesting that the old bits of wood are still not only strong enough to support whatever this building is, but the method of construction is also still strong enough to support the building. And so they've just added, obviously to renovate it slightly, added this piece at the very top. So just to sort of reiterate this point, that the knowledge of materials and is so important, is these types of buildings that you see that are hundreds of years old, and the way that they worked with the properties of the material rather than just trying to stick two pieces of wood together. So you can sort of greatly admire and respect that it still works, because they had this knowledge of materials and processes and techniques, and they only had basic tools and fastening methods. So I think, all of these are being built without glue or screws or anything like that. And this Chinese temple at the bottom, with the construction, is actually sort of earthquake proof. So it's actually built to wobble. So yeah, whereas, we think about buildings being stronger today, but actually this one is built based on this idea of, wood is a flexible material, essentially. So it's just interesting to look at it in a different way, that, instead of trying to build it stronger, you build it more flexible. So yeah, so when I was, this is a table that I designed, it sort of comes from a similar idea, is looking at the material and just reimagining the process. So it's pretty obvious where I got the inspiration from, I think. Basically it's taken from the log, and this idea of where does wood come from. So wood comes from trees are shaped like logs, and So I basically tried to take this idea and go back to a table called the log table. So yeah, so then I turned it into more products. So there was a log cabinet, and I tried to sort of remove all the handles and try and hide the drawer handles and hide everything, just to people to focus on this idea of the material and the once you see it, you get it straight away and you just sort of go, I get it. So yeah, so I wanted to build this sort of log cabin of furniture. So yeah, and in the end, it worked out pretty well. So yeah, and so then in another sort of design project, which was actually for American hardwood, continuing on this idea of understanding and knowing the possibilities of the material. So I was working on their exhibition booth, which is quite a while ago, I think 2016. And so at the time, American Hardwood were doing this project all about sustainability and how quickly the forest can grow, but also how you can sort of maximize the use of timber. So I had this idea of taking the least amount of wood I could use, but making sort of a really impressive exhibition booth. And if you've done a lot of exhibition work, it's incredibly wasteful. All of these exhibitions generally get thrown away at the end of 4 days. So it's nice to sort of think that I used a lot less material. So yeah, so this is what it looked like on the inside. So it was basically, I took timber veneer. So I'll show you in a minute. And it looked like that. So this is how it was constructed. So it was all constructed in Indonesia. And so the top left-hand picture, which is all the actual strips of timber veneer. So you can see it's actually a very small package of veneer that we used. So this little package of wood that we used actually created that entire booth. And we probably didn't even use 3/4 of what you can see there. So basically I planned out how it would work, how we would make the pattern and then cut the pattern. And you can kind of see in the bottom right photo, we made a little frame and then stuck the pattern onto each specific frame, and then built up this it's basically a house shape onto this exhibition. So yeah, so what I was trying to say, or what I was sort of inspired by, was how little wood that I could use to create this entire booth. So yeah, and essentially it was made like that, like sort of curtains, and all sent over. So it got sent to Singapore and then sent back to Indonesia again, and it was all just Velcroed on. So all the strips just had all the black lines you can see there is just Velcro. And so yeah, so once they bolted the frame together, you could just stick the Velcro onto the frame, and then you'd have these curtain walls. So again, just before I move on to the next bit, so just those ideas were just sort of about looking at the material and sort of getting some sort of inspiration or adjusting your process based on the material you've got at hand. So the next point was basically similar to the first one, is that knowing your process. So yeah, so it's similar. It's like the more you can understand and see how you work with the wood, or how other people work with the wood, the more you can manipulate this process to try and create something new, or try and add some value or to your design ideas. So this is a chair, not by me, but by a guy called David Trubridge. And he's also a carpenter. He's very amazing carpenter, woodworker, and designer. But what's most clever about this chair, which was actually commissioned by AHEC as well, he understands the production process of wood extremely well, because he has his own factory. He works with wood all the time. So in this chair, the particular sizes of the slats and the thickness of the wood is based on what you purchase when you order it from the timber supplier. So there's actually very little cutting and very little wastage of the wood in this chair, which is a big deal in production. So whether the form or the function is something you love or don't love, it doesn't really matter. But what is important is the way he thought about it. And so you can see down the bottom there's some figures about how little carbon it uses up, and it says there that it actually takes 1.06 seconds to grow this much wood used in this chair across the American hardwood forests. So it's quite impressive that he made this reasonably large chair, I guess, for so little energy and so little material. But it was based on his knowledge of production and supply, I guess, the thicknesses that the wood comes in. So it's actually very clever of him. And it's a good starting point as well. So just understanding your production process or understanding what's available to you can give you, new ways to look at your ideas. So I had a similar situation. So this is a chair I designed, also constructed in Indonesia, which is actually made of teak. But wood comes, it's straight, it's flat, it's difficult to bend, and it's costly to change the shape of it too much. So it takes a lot of effort. You either have to cut it a lot, glue it together, or shape it somehow. So I was sort of working with this company who had, very standard machinery and standard pieces of wood. And I wanted to try and transform that process into something more. So if you can see here, the wood for each slat of the chair is actually the same thickness. But because I've cut it on a funny angle on top and bottom, it actually looks like it's kind of changing thickness. So yeah, it actually won the award for best outdoor furniture in the US back in 2008 or something. So yeah, just saying that the idea of working with your process, the better you can understand the processes available and how you cut the wood, shape the wood, glue the wood, you can mess around with these things to form the actual design. Oops, next one. So yeah, another sort of starting point you could have is sort of examining your own culture. So this, often when we look at this, you think of like, oh, the history or the past or something, but it doesn't necessarily mean to only look towards the past, but just being aware of your surroundings. And you might notice something that you're like, oh, I could do that in this way. So I'll just give you an example. So this is a fairly obvious one. So basically this Italian company approached me to design some products for them, but they're a very traditional company who makes metal furniture using the most traditional method possible, which is heating it up and hitting it with a hammer. So essentially I was thinking like, what can I do with this method of construction? and they were asking me to design something inspired or Asian inspired, some sort of Asian themed furniture. So of course I sort of looked at traditional Chinese furniture, very Asian style furniture, and tried to combine that with their very traditional metal, basically blacksmithing works, and turn it into sort of something modern and you know, something that you can see where the inspiration comes from. But yeah, it's not necessarily like you know, Chinese in itself, as in it, once you put other objects on, it doesn't feel as Chinese as you know, the inspiration is. So I also designed a table for them, which uses their wrought iron method, and also again inspired by sort of this Ming Chinese table. And so it's actually very difficult to bend the metal underneath there. So, which was one of the reasons I wanted to do it, was because that's their specialty. So once I knew their process, like, oh, you can do it like this, then I thought, oh, you know, well, you know, I could use their extremely traditional process for some other very extremely traditional inspiration product. Then this is another same idea but different approach, where the inspiration came from something very, you know, very basic, very boring. So basically, yeah, in Singapore, we eat at a lot of restaurants and cafes that look like this. So, you know, there's, this one's empty, obviously, but once it's full, all the stools are taken up, and you can see the lady sitting on the left-hand side has her bag on an extra chair. But of course, once all the extra chairs are filled up, then there's nowhere for her to put her bag. So the idea came about to design a table where you could hang your bag on the table without a hook. But I didn't want to literally add a hook to the design. I wanted the design to be something where the hook is not obvious. It's just sort of something that it feels natural. So you're looking, you've got your bag in your hand and you're looking around like, oh, where can I put my bag? But, and then you just happen to, you know, notice like, oh, I can hang it here because the leg pokes up slightly. So it's so subtle that it doesn't sort of interrupt the design, but it's so obvious once I tell you it's there that you go, oh, okay, that makes sense. It's a table with, you know, a leg with a hook on it. But yeah, until, you know, you experience that problem, it's not sort of something that's feels like necessary on the design. So it's sort of like this aha moment, I guess, the moment where you go, oh, I get it now. You know, this is so amazing. I really love this table because I can hang my bag on the leg. What a smart idea. So that's what I was looking for in that design there. So yeah, so again, that's sort of trying to be aware of your surroundings, be aware of your culture, whether it's, you know, historical culture or something, you know, more, you know, just outside your door right now. There's always things that you know, little problems that you face or things that annoy you. So all of these can be inspiration for your design. So another angle you can look at it is basically reducing waste. So although everyone's talking about it and, you know, it's part of the theme for your project, being environmentally conscious and sustainable and all of those things, but it can actually form the starting point or be a major part of your design, I guess. So here's a few simple examples. So this chair here is by a Japanese designer, I think. I'm pretty sure it's Japanese. And so if you can see that, you know, the pieces of wood are joined together by lots of little slats on the seat and the backrest. And it's not such a large piece of wood that they couldn't have done it out of one solid piece of wood. But if you know about sort of production and production waste, factories have a lot of these tiny pieces lying around, and creating a chair out of these skinny pieces actually reduces a lot of waste in the process, and reuses a lot of what would be, I guess, termed waste wood, and also cuts down on the cost, because the larger the piece of wood, the more expensive it is. So it's actually clever in the way that they've done that, but they haven't actually sort of reduced their design or adjusted their design particularly to suit this idea. They've kind of just incorporated it into the design. So this, back to that other chair that again before. So you can see a bit more clearly on the right-hand picture, the skinny slats that he used to make the chair. But on the left, you'll see this is the famous stool by Charles and Ray Eames. And actually, when you look closely at it, it's formed out of a lot of very small pieces. It looks like one piece of wood, but it's actually not. It's probably about 30, 40 small pieces of wood, which I guess would probably also be considered waste wood in a factory. So if they can reuse these small pieces, this particular stool is, really expensive to buy, but the actual material is probably, considered quite cheap and almost production waste, I guess. So it's a clever way of approaching that, whether there was an afterthought or whether it was part of the design at the beginning. But we can look at it now and sort of say, oh, yeah, that's very smart. So this is another example of sort of waste wood being used, which is actually, this is an IKEA table. So, I mean, this is a very extreme example, and you can see that, these are all scraps that have been rejoined together to form a larger table, and it doesn't look great, I guess, in terms of design, but it's more the thinking process I'm just trying to explain here, that they've tried to create a design out of scrap timber, and maybe it wasn't very popular, who knows, but it looks like it's made of teak anyway. So another thing, I mean, just talking about teak, a bit away from American hardwood, but once the teak table is put outside, pretty much it will all turn gray. So you could generally hide all the funny colored bits on the table anyway. But then this next version, you can see where the designer has sort of gone with a similar idea, and they've really thought about. Hey, John, I can hear you. Yeah, but you can see where the designer, has really taken the same idea, this idea of essentially what would be scrap pieces of wood, and reformed them. And, the difference is one's turned out kind of ugly and one turns out really well. So it just depends on how you look at the material, or whether it's looking at waste, or how you use this particular waste. So on to the next one. So I just labeled this one as "you can't always get what you want." So as we all know, we're in COVID times, which has interrupted wood supply quite a lot, and but not even during this period of time, but large pieces of wood are very difficult to get hold of. So which makes it sort of necessary for designers to be more innovative with how they use the wood that is readily available. So, but this can also be not a hamper to your design, but act as the inspiration for your design. So if it means joining a lot of smaller pieces together, can that be done in such a way that actually makes the design better? So in this case, you can see, this coffee table uses a lot of very small, very thin pieces overlapping to create the pattern that they're looking for. So it comes down to, the level of creativity of the designer as to what they can do. So again, this one's sort of similar to the other one, but in a sort of more artistic way, I guess you'd say. These sorts of random pieces are much more available than like a large, nice, solid piece of wood. And also you can see that the way they've sort of joined the table sides together, which I guess would be on purpose, doing the dovetail joints there, has actually, exposed more of this pattern and more of this feature of this stripy wood. And then another version, which is, a bit different, but less about sort of waste or anything like that, is just taking the idea of small pieces to begin with. So using that as, the primary feature of your design, making it more delicate, making it more sort of intriguing, I guess you could say. So whether you're specifically trying to be socially responsible or, you're using small pieces because they look good, it's up to you as the designer, how your decisions inform the direction of your design, I guess. So yeah, another one is designing for production and assembly. So, this is sort of similar to the idea of knowing your process and knowing your materials. But one way, you could think about your design is, can you start by focusing on the sort of the end and working backwards? In this way, like, production and assembly is always a problem later on, after you come up with the cool looking design. But if you think about it first, you can reduce, a lot of problems later on and actually use it to improve the design at the beginning. So a good example is this lamp here. So so the production of these lamps is all using one machine, so one CNC machine. So the pieces are all laid out on your CAD program, and then they're all cut on a single CNC machine. And so essentially you can get one whole lamp maybe out of one piece of plywood. But the focus is sort of, of course the form and the style are amazing, but the idea that, you've basically thought about production and flat packing and assembly, and that has informed the form and the style, is very interesting for the designer, I guess. And so the idea that you can still make it look amazing, even though you started with flat pack and started with mass production in mind first, rather than the other way around, which is normally the case. So then, yeah, so this is what are the material properties again. So this one I just wanted to show you. It's not really particularly different to any of the others, but so there's been sort of a lot of technological developments with wood, I guess. So this is one that the American hardwood guys all know, which is thermally modified timber, which is basically taking standard wood and heat treating it, or essentially cooking it until it's lost all its water, lost all its sugars, and which makes it much more resistant to mold and rot. And basically, you can use it for outdoors. So previously, most American hardwoods are only, suitable for indoor use. So, but through sort of essentially cooking it, it can now be used outdoors. So this is in the Disneyland in Shanghai. So this is American ash used on the exterior of the building. And so when I was, when I learned about this technology, and it just so happens there's a factory that can do it in Indonesia. And so I suggested to John and AHEC to just basically create a booth for their next show, showing the possibilities of this sort of indoor-outdoor wood. So this booth was constructed all of red oak, which is, as the AHEC guys probably have told you, that it's a really readily available timber. And there's a lot of it, and it's, currently sold cheaper than other species of timber. And so after we basically cooked it and experimented with cooking it for, a few different ways, different times, different heat, different pressure. So I designed this booth to try and show this sort of outdoorsy feel of this booth. So this is just trying to say that, I got my inspiration for the design from essentially wood technology. So I wanted to show how, people or companies or customers could use this wood and use this new technology in a different way to what they're normally used to experiencing American hardwood. So yeah, basically I created this type of display, which was, I guess, kind of like a outdoor pavilion, and it had a lot of these sliding screens. So when they slid, they all crisscrossed over each other and made these grid patterns. So you can see inside, I also used a lot of veneer to try and make lamps. And then I also created a collection of outdoor furniture. So using this red oak that had all been thermally modified. And just to show that, the wood could do, several different things, basically. So for you guys, you can essentially find inspiration anywhere. You don't have to look at the wood as just, I have to do a wooden chair, or I have to do a wooden table, but just looking at it from a different angle and a different perspective can give you, some pretty good ideas about different ways you can sort of manipulate the wood or manipulate the process to come up with something new. So this one also, it's kind of about being smart with how you use your resource that you have available. And it could be in like a very arty way, like this one. You can kind of see it's made of walnut, but it's all cut in very sort of jagged, strange shapes, kind of like camouflage. But the effect, when you see it in real life, it's really incredible. But actually, it uses not that much wood. It's mostly veneer, but they can essentially use any pattern, so they're not wasting anything. This table sells for hundreds of thousands of dollars, I think. But another example is this bed head you can see on the right. It's actually constructed in Indonesia as well. And basically it's made from pieces of wood that would be thrown away because they're not big enough and not straight enough that you can sort of cut them into planks. But by, slicing them along the trunk, and you get sort of these strange patterns and things. So they use that to reshape the edges and just, you know, smooth them out a bit, and then basically build this kind of jigsaw of wood. And this is one of the most popular beds in the US at the moment. So it's selling very well, even though it's, you know, something that was not sort of, you wouldn't sort of say, oh, you know, that's a brilliant sort of designer, you know, thinking, but actually the idea behind it is very clever, sort of basically adding value to something that would be, you know, possibly thrown away, or people just don't regard it as something special. So which brings me to the final point, is increasing the value. So basically the whole idea of designing something is that basically you guys will be trying to add value in some way, to the material, to the process, to the idea, and so this is sort of dictated by the decisions that you make on the form and the function, and the reasons why you make each of these decisions. So yeah, as I put here, there's so many chairs, a chair, another chair, another chair. There's unlimited amounts of chairs. So most of the ones you see in this picture sort of don't have any particular story, or may not have any, idea about culture or fit into any specific culture, or there's nothing about sort of materials or production process. And in the end, probably none of us who look at these chairs particularly give them any type of value, I guess. It's just a chair. So they're simply, the most banal chairs that you can sort of come across. So in the end, that kind of makes them this commodity, I guess, rather than sort of a design. So that's obviously not what, we're looking for in this project, and not what you guys are trying to do. So what I wanted to show you here was that, this is essentially another chair, but it's a good example of, another chair that's something more. So even though it's not radical or overly wild in its style, but the thought process behind the design is what we like about it, which it's hard to determine, but you can definitely feel something that you can relate to. It's a chair that everyone really loves, but apart from saying, oh, it's really clean, really nice, it's hard to explain why it's so nice. So basically, I mean, I've spoken with the designer of this chair quite a bit, and he really thinks about the actions that people take and the feelings that you get when you sit in a chair. And so when he was designing this chair, he constantly thought about, where do you put your hands? How do your elbows rest? How do you stand up? How do you sit down? How do you lean off to the right, lean off to the left, that sort of thing. So all of these small decisions and, the way he responded to these ideas or thoughts in his head is basically what informed this design. So, and the company that made this chair is a company from Japan called Maruni, which is a really good case study of, furniture production and furniture design. So previously, the company was quite an unknown sort of Japanese furniture manufacturer, and they made high quality products, but sort of nothing special. So until they partnered with some well-known designers, and then after these products were launched, they realized they could sell these products, whether they were forced to or realized they could, at a much higher price. So obviously these chairs are very expensive, and but they're still really popular, and it's basically because the design added so much value to the product. Even though, as I said, it's another chair. It's made of wood. It's not essentially different to the other chairs I showed you in the other picture. They're still the same function. You still sit on them, but this particular chair not only looks better, but there's something that we can relate to throughout all the different aspects of the chair, from the feeling to the look to the style, everything. So ultimately, this, I guess, is what you guys are trying to do, is create something new or add value to the material and the processes of furniture production or interior production or interior style through thoughtful decisions and the decisions that you make about this design. So, but as I've been saying sort of throughout this whole thing, is that the decisions could be inspired or influenced by any of the points that I've talked about. So it doesn't have to come from just the form or the function or the user, or it could come from your materials, looking at your materials in a different way, or understanding your process and manipulating the process, or examining your culture. So as I said, it doesn't have to be historical culture. It could be something much more closer to you. So it could come from reducing waste, which is part of the theme of the project, a bit of sustainability, and it that could be the basis, or it could be something you think about afterwards. As I say, you can't always get what you want, but yeah, I mean, a nice big piece of wood might look good in certain situations, but does it necessarily have to be that way? Maybe thin strips do look better, who knows? And then, for what are the material properties, again, was where I was kind of inspired by sort of technological advances in timber production and timber processing. Or you could just sort of look at it from more of a production and assembly idea of you don't actually have to construct an exhibition booth with 4 walls and a roof and everything, but I tried to do it out of veneer, using like this idea of curtains velcroed onto the walls, or it could be like the lamp, where it's the production and assembly sort of informs the design at the beginning. So, and with that, I think I've come to the end of my little presentation. So yeah, if anyone's got any questions, then let me know. So I think back to you, Rena, or back to somebody.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lim, for the presentation and for sharing your knowledge. Now we're going to start our question and answer session. Okay, our first question is from Nabil. Hi, as interior design student, how do I choose a right theme for my new project, which is interior space? Is it about the red oak timber?
Sorry, how do I choose a right
theme for my new
right
project?
theme?
Which is interior space.
I don't think there's any particular correct theme, is there? I think it's up to the designer to come up with a theme that's appropriate. So whether it's I don't know, I assume everything's open to you, as in you could be doing an exhibition display. The only limitations, I think, is the size limits, and that it has to include timber. But it could be, let's say a display for clothing in a store. Maybe it's a portable display for clothing in a store that can be, recreated and rebuilt. This sort of imagining a client or imagining the situation is what's going to inform your decisions that you make, I think. So, if I was designing, let's say, this imaginary clothing display for the center of a shopping mall, I would start thinking about, how are they going to construct it? How are they going to assemble it? How are people going to see it? Obviously, there's going to be issues there. They're going to see it from all sides, 360 degrees. They'll see it from on top because people will go up to the second floor of the shopping mall and look down. So for me, if I was doing that sort of interior space, having that idea at the start is what will basically answer my questions as I'm going through the design. Because I want to design a theme, or I want to design a space that people are going to look at from all directions, that they're going to go, wow, and it's a lot of the time that's what other, let's say exhibition companies, or they don't think about these things because they've got a very standard way of building their display. And so they don't think about maybe the people looking down from on top. All of those sorts of small, let's call them problems, is what sort of gives potential for creating something more interesting, I guess. So I think, yeah, whether you're like that, to me, that's an easy one, is designing a fashion display for the center of a shopping mall. I think you have to give yourself some sort of imaginary client or imaginary situation so that you can have these problems that you can imagine so that you can solve them. Yeah, so I don't know, it can be anything, whether it's a display for, it could be a pet display or a pet food display, or I don't know. I don't think there's any, right or wrong answer as to the theme. As long as, it could be a display of just about environment, or, climate change or something like that. I don't know. I think it's just how you respond to it is how you define your parameters as to how you'll be able to justify your decisions when you're making the design. So I hope that answers the question a bit.
Okay.
But if any of the organizers have any comments to add, then please do.
Okay, thank you for the answer. Now we're going to the second question. It's from Meganova. Okay, the question is, now we are facing the issue of climate change. Some time ago, there were also many forest fires. And the question is, first, is there still an opportunity for us, the young designer, in the future to use wood in our design? And the second one is how to process the forest as a source of wood material so that we can still use it in the future. And the third question is, in your opinion, is there any material that can replace wood? That's it all.
Okay. Okay, so here's a nice plug for AHEC. So if you read all the information, basically the American hardwood forest grows faster than we are using it. So John can correct me if I'm a bit off here, but essentially the well-managed forest, so where they harvest the correct amount in the correct locations, will grow back faster than the amount that gets used. So if we use, it's hard to describe. If you're using, so many tons of timber, it's actually growing faster than it's being used in the US hardwood forests. So in terms of sustainability, the choice of US hardwood is a much better choice than many other, timbers around the world. But so that's sort of the eco-friendly plug of American hardwood. But what was the other parts of the question? Is how much can we use timber in the future? Well, Yes. So basically, yes. As long as we continue to use it carefully, I guess. So, which I think, your design can respond to that. And it's more the way you justify how you make the decisions in your design, as to whether people view it as, I say, sustainable. So basically, if you have a table that's made of wood, basically the carbon inside the wood will stay inside that wood forever unless you were to burn the table. So essentially, wood, not only the tree itself sucks the carbon out of the air, but essentially traps the carbon in the tree for the lifetime of the wood. So the only way that carbon goes back into the atmosphere is by burning the wood. So yeah, in terms of, can we continue to use, or is it, sustainable to use wood? Again, yes, very much so. And, if in architecture, they've, already calculated that buildings constructed out of timber, with timber framework, things like that, working out to be much more carbon friendly than, the same building constructed out of concrete and steel. So yeah, so hopefully that answers some of the question, unless there's some more bits of the question.
Okay, there's still another question.
Yep.
Next question is from Adisti. Hello, as a designer, what is your biggest inspiration in designing a project? Thank you.
Okay. So yeah, as I tried to show throughout most of the pictures there, is that I don't really sort of have inspiration. I mean, not sort of like, wow, this sort of magic inspiration. It comes from sort of looking at the project itself. So, and then, yeah, looking at the materials, looking at the process, looking at all different aspects of the project. So as you sort of saw throughout each of the projects I showed, sometimes it's inspired, I guess, by a problem that's happening with the production, or it's a way of, I've got access to the new technology of the wood, and I want to show what it can do, and that inspires the designs. Like, I need to show this wood can now go indoors and outdoors. Or it could be, some sort of problem that I've seen outside, or it's just inspired by the way we use particular objects, or the way we sit around in certain ways, or it could be anything. So it's not particularly like waiting for inspiration to strike, as in like doing an artwork or something. It's sort of more always the project first, I guess.
Okay, I have that answer for Adisti. And the next question is from Bintang. Good afternoon, Mr. Jarrod. I want to ask, during this pandemic, how is the treatment of wood materials which have many pores and texture, if the wood wants to look natural and not mixed with chemical finishing, so not become a place for virus, bacteria, and easy to clean? Thank you.
Okay. That one I don't really, I mean, the wood, there's lots of ways you can finish wood. So it doesn't always have to be chemically finished. But I guess, so most of the wood products that I've worked with, I mean, we do spray them in a spray, a clear spray, but it's actually a water-based finish, which is better than the old, chemical-based finish, I guess. But that's not the only way of sort of finishing wood. So, I mean, yeah, you can wax it, you can do all sorts of things with it to finish wood. You can actually burn it. And then, in the other project I showed is our thermally modified one where we cooked it, which basically cooking it removes everything that the mold and everything wants to eat. Um, so there's nothing left for the bugs or the mold to eat. But in terms of whether wood holds a virus or not, that one I can't really answer. I don't know. I guess a virus can sit on any surface. So whether wood holds viruses more than other surfaces, I'm not really sure. I guess you could always spray it with antibacterial spray. Yeah, so I don't really know whether wood holds viruses more than metal or more than glass or more than fabric, or maybe fabric holds viruses more than wood. I don't know. So that one I can't really answer.
Okay. Okay, we are going to the next question from Lucky Akbar. From your point of view, how do you interpret the existing problems as limitations or challenge? Because the definition of limits or boundaries or challenge can produce different outcomes.
Mm. Yeah, so I think that's kind of what I was trying to explain throughout the whole presentation, was that, yeah, looking at often, when people think about wooden furniture or wooden spaces or just working with wood, it generally, yeah, people automatically see a lot of the limitations of working with wood. And I mean, it's true, there are limitations. It's hard to bend. It's, it's works well in one direction but not in another, and all sorts of things like that. But this is where, you guys as designers have to think, oh, maybe I could, do it like this. So all the pictures that I was showing is where someone has basically taken the limits of, oh, the wood always looks funny, on the end of the plank. So, but then there's one table where the guy has cut the end of the plank over and over and over again and turned it into something amazing. Um, but for most of us, we want to always try and hide the end of the plank of wood. Um, so yeah, so all of those limitations, if you fiddle around with them enough and manipulate them enough, then yes, they can become, something more special, or can become the inspiration for the design. Yeah, so it's kind of the same with the production. Having small pieces of wood, a lot of people see that as a limitation or a challenge. Like, oh, I can only get small bits of wood. It's very difficult to have a big giant board. But actually, you have to look at that as, okay, that can be the basis or the inspiration for your design right there. Yeah, I'm only going to use small pieces of wood and come up with something amazing. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for the answer. And next is the question from Stella. What is the most common timber hardwood product issues?
Sorry, what's the most common?
Timber hardwood product issues.
The most common product issues. Um, it's probably not so much a product issue, but the fact is that almost everyone, designers included, want to have very clean pieces of wood with no spots, no dark spots, no light spots, no weird marks on the wood. But the I mean, the reality is that the wood is, a natural occurring material. The trees are growing, they're getting, all sorts of things are happening to them. There's bugs, there's water, there's temperature changes, which create changes in the wood. So all of those issues are visible in the wood material itself. So, I mean, it's something you have to work around, and it's something that doesn't necessarily need to be a problem. It depends on how you deal with it. It depends on how you sort of manipulate the material to show whether these different colors or different marks on the wood can be a feature rather than a problem. Yeah. So it's up to the designer again. So that's I mean, everybody complains about, oh, there's a black spot on this piece of wood. But yeah, so some people, you know, why don't we just add black spots across the whole thing and, you know, we'll have a black spotty piece of wood. I don't know. But that's sort of up to the designer to think about.
Okay. Now, for the next question is from Aaron. Hello, Mr. Jarrod. Designer has a job to solve problem, and I believe good answer always comes from a good question. I want to ask about how do you choose a right problem to process, or did you have any standard of it? Thank you.
Okay. No, I don't have any standard of problem. So I think the problem can be anything. It can be a very big problem, or it can be a very small problem. So yeah, so like, you know, sustainability is a very, very big problem, and it's difficult to solve with one, you know, one piece of furniture or one display space. But it's, you know, that's something you can add to your design. But you know, some of the other designs that I've done, it's solving a very small problem. You know, like the one where you're putting your bag somewhere at a restaurant. I mean, everyone has that problem at some point. And so I, you know, that just, I sort of said, oh, so annoying. How come there's no hook under the table? I mean, people even invented those tiny little bag hooks that you carry around. It looks like a key ring, and you hook it onto the table, and you can hang your bag off the table. But yeah, so there's always a small or a big problem, and I don't think any of the problems would be considered the correct problem or a better problem than another problem. It's just sort of how you solve whatever problem it is you discover. You know, and if it's a space, if you're talking about an interior space, I mean, it could be the problem of too much noise. You know, that's a problem we all face in, let's say, a restaurant. So maybe why don't you design a portable restaurant booth or a modular restaurant booth, which somehow helps reduce noise in the restaurant? I don't know. It could be something like that. It doesn't have to be a world-saving problem, I guess. So yeah, so I think you just got to select the problem and try and solve it as best you can.
Okay, thank you for the answer. Now the question from Imaduddin. How is the growing concern for deforestation affect the wooden furniture industry and design?
How does the concern, sorry, again?
Or how is the growing concern for deforestation affect the wooden furniture industry and design?
Okay. Again, so you may have heard about different organizations, like one called FSC, that Forest Stewardship Council, that basically, you know, label wood as either sustainable or not. But you know, so I think if you guys go and research sort of AHEC and the American Hardwood website and all the materials they've got, then I think you'll understand much better about why certain wood selection, I get, or selecting certain species or certain grades of timber, or even certain, you know, countries and their timber, how they manage their forests. Then you'll sort of learn a lot more about why some using some wood is far better than using other wood. And it generally comes down to how that country or how that region is managing their forest, as in how fast are they cutting it down, how fast are they replanting it, and how fast do those trees grow versus how much wood do they actually use. So yeah, it's not an easy question to answer because it's very very much determined by which areas of forest we're talking about, and which comes down to which species of wood we're talking about. So yes, so obviously some countries just don't care. They chop down their trees like crazy. But yeah, so hopefully just understanding that, you know, in the US, they're actually very protective of their forest and managing it sustainably and correctly, sort of gives you a much better idea of how you can, you know, create a sustainable piece and justify using timber products and justify your selection of wood for this project and for any project, I guess. So yeah, so one of the reasons why red oak has been selected is because it's so available. The trees, there's a lot of trees, red oak trees around, and you know, so because other trees have been harvested more, essentially they were more popular. So you know, red oak is technically less popular, and there's more of it available. So that's some, you know, one of the reasons why it's been incorporated into this project. Yeah. So hopefully that answers the question.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lim. I guess that's our last question, but we still have time
Good.
left for another question.
Okay.
If there is any participant who still have a question. But before we jump to another question, maybe there is some word from our mentor, maybe Bu Kano or Bu Lina. Still have time for another question.
So no more question here, Jarrod.
Okay.
Oh, I think one
That's
more.
fine.
One more here, Arsita. There's one more here coming.
Okay. From Caroline, from your point of view, are there several factors to consider when designing a small room?
When designing a small room,
Yes.
yeah, of course. Depends what sort of room it is, I guess. Is it a bedroom or a kitchen or a toilet or I don't know. There's 1,000 factors to consider. Yeah, I mean, how does the person move in and out? What are they doing in there? I mean, there's a big difference between designing a bedroom and designing a, you know, a display space for clothes. So yeah, you got to think of it from everyone's point of view. Like, how do the people use it? How do they see it? How do they get in, get out? You know, what do they do in there? What's happening outside the room? How does that affect what's happening inside the room? There's 1,000 issues that, you know, you should be thinking about, and each one of them will adjust your design slightly, or it could be, you know, the main inspiration for the room itself. You know, maybe you're designing a small soundproof booth for meetings, yeah, because, you know, now we're in, you know, bigger spaces or bigger offices, but we're all doing video calls now. So therefore, you know, people want to have their own meeting room, I guess, specifically for smaller meetings and video calls. You know, that has its own specific requirements of designing, let's say, a meeting space aimed at Zoom calls, which we're all doing all the time at the moment. So I don't know, any small room can have its own requirements and thousands of different considerations. Yeah.
No more. Okay, Arsita. So finish, yeah. The question is, that's all. Any more question from the mentor, maybe? If not, then anything to say from you again, Jarrod?
No, I think I've said, yeah, it's more about like coming up with your own guidelines and your own, yeah, once you set your own theme or your own objective, that will start, that will start to inform your reasons behind all your decisions. Yeah. So without that, it's hard to even start. If you know, why am I making this square space? I don't know. You know, is it for old people, young people? Is it a kid's space? Is it each one of those things will radically change the look and feel and all the decisions you make. You know, obviously if you're designing, let's say a kid's playroom or something, you're going to have a lot of rounded shapes, or the kids are going to bang their head, or I don't know, things like that. So yeah, without those guidelines, you sort of lost, I guess.
Okay. Thanks again, Jarrod, for the presentation.
No problem.
Yeah. Actually, we listen to your work, your product, your design, your design method especially for the mentees. And regarding the design brief, actually, we already handed, right? We already handed it this morning. So maybe all the mentees hasn't prepared and hasn't really absorbed it. But basically, is all about design. We just limited, no theme, but we using red oak 70% or even more than that for interior spaces and furnitures also. And we have 4 great mentor also that support all the mentees here. So we have 48. They have a specific submission and specific criteria also about the dimension, about how they're gonna start with the process, the collecting and everything. And especially we want to have some Indonesian character also mixed with this product or interior spaces. So basically it's right. We want to have a new things, new space and new product, anything, no limits. And I hope all the Indonesian designers and students here have a new spirit also, and especially after listening to the all the great product and design from you. So after all, thank you again. I think I saw Abby wants to say something. Please. One of the mentor want to say something? Yes, Abi. Silakan.
Hi, Jarrod. How are you?
Hey, hello. Good. How are you?
Yeah, great. Yeah, I think I have seen a lot of your works, especially during the IFFS, the Furniture Fair in Singapore. So I think my question is, as a Southeast Asian designer, as a designer located in Singapore in particular, how do you find yourself able to become competitive in this furniture design scene, and how to stand out yourselves within your works in the design community. So yeah, seeing a lot of your projects and clients came from renowned design brands as well. So maybe, yeah, share some inspiration for all these young designers from Indonesia, from a small country, so to say. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, I mean, firstly, I think you have to, I mean, let's say, you have to be quite consistent in sort of how you approach your project in some way. I mean, I think a lot of my designs don't have always have a specific appearance or a style that's so obviously my style, maybe, which is kind of not great, I guess, sometimes. But I don't know, I think is for me, it's more about the thought process behind each of the designs. So sometimes it sort of leads in a different direction. But I think generally you can, I mean, some people say that they, you know, they can tell that it's my type of work or not. So I'm not sure if you know, having a style of your own is sort of the first way that you know, you have to be consistent with your style to you know, continuously be recognized. Oh, he always does, you know, very minimal work, or he always does very Japanese style, or he always does very something type of style. But yeah, obviously that's one aspect of you know, being, I guess, noticed for doing something in particular. Then sort of, I guess, mostly a lot of my work has come through kind of just meeting random people, who which generally comes through doing more work. So, you know, my first project in Singapore was actually with an Indonesian company called Roda Jati, which is out of Solo. And yeah, it was, you know, completely strange for me. I just happened to be introduced to this company via the Singapore Furniture Council, which is the government organization here. And just one of the guys who was high up in this organization said, "Oh, I'd like you to meet this this furniture company in Indonesia. You know, they're really, I mean, they made really basic furniture, all the traditional type of furniture you see every day." And so we did this range of chairs and tables, and we showed it at this exhibition in Singapore first, and then it wasn't like a big space or anything. It wasn't flashy or anything, but I just happened to show this, which was the one where I cut the tables and chairs on a funny angle. And from there, I met so many other people, and you know, I ended up meeting a lot of Indonesian people, Indonesian factories, Indonesian companies, because they all recognized, they all kept coming up to me, "Oh, is this teak? Is this teak? Is this teak?" Because they were surprised that what I had done with teak, which was completely different to what every other company had done with teak previously. So yeah, so it wasn't even something conscious that I you know, I tried to meet with Indonesian factories or anything like that. It just happened. And yeah, so it started from that one project, which again, I didn't mean to do anything special with teak it was designed based on limited production processes, and yeah, it grew from there. So then, because of that, I met a lot of other factories with different, capabilities, and it's kind of grew from there. So that's sort of my Southeast Asian sort of experience, I guess. It's kind of been to just work with whatever you've got available to you, with whatever project or whatever company or material or whatever. And it just so happened, I got noticed by some, more of the same, or people that were interested in other things. Yeah. So it's surprising that I showed teak furniture in Italy maybe a couple of years ago, and again, the Italians were just amazed, like, oh, is this teak? Is this teak? Is this teak? Like, but if you say teak wood to any Indonesian person, it's like nothing. It's it's everywhere. So I don't know. So it's just not so much like maybe we're too limited in our perspective. We don't realize that other people look at Southeast Asia as something exotic. Yeah, to us it's like, oh, it's just standard. Yeah, this is what we do. This is where we live. It's just is. So yeah, so same as Singapore. It's one Italian person, they lived in quite a small part of Italy, came over to Singapore, and they were amazed by Singapore. They just said, wow, it's like, you guys live in the future. And to me, that was like, what, it's Singapore, it's just another big city. So I never really thought about it like that. So yeah, so I think, you sort of have to think about how other people sort of view what we feel is, again, a limitation. We're stuck in Southeast Asia, but it's not necessarily, limiting, I guess. It's something to sort of work with, I guess. Yeah. So hopefully that sort of explains a bit about sort of how I kind of got here and what I did, and sort of how I think about it now more.
Hello? Okay, Arsipan. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Before the closing, maybe we can take a picture for documentation. I'm asking some of the participants who haven't opened the camera, maybe please open the camera for the documentation. I'm gonna wait.
1, 2, 3. Okay.
Yeah, there's 3 slides in here.
1, 2, 3. Good. 1, 2, 3.
Going
Okay.
for the participant to open their camera.
Okay, then.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Wait. The second slide. 1, 2, 3.
Okay. So.
Okay. Once again, thank you for Mr. Lim for the presentation and for sharing your knowledge to us. And thank you for all of the participants, the mentor and the mentees for coming. Also, thank you for Mr. John for coming. And yeah. And the next information, our next classroom will be held in 11 February with Karina, so don't forget to come. And the design brief is already handed in each mentor. And for all of the mentees, please don't forget to join the group with your own mentor. That's it from me. Maybe there's some word from Mrs. Rina, our other mentor.
No, enough. See you. See you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you,
Hello.
Jarrod.
Hi.
Okay.
Hi.
Thank you.
I just want to say
Oh, okay.
that one line, a word, thank you for your participation in this joint program between HDII and AHEC. And I guess all know my colleagues, Kina, we're working together very hard with the HDII team and the mentors. And now we also like to thank the mentees, and so before this classes is going to come finished over today, as you know that 4 days from today, there will be, it is the Chinese Lunar New Year. So I want to wish you all have a happy, healthy holidays, and no matter what cultures you have, that, but I know that Indonesia has one day to celebrate a public holiday to celebrate the Chinese, the Lunar New Year. And so we look forward to seeing you again in the next classes on 11th of February and then the 18th. And then following the, the mentor classes, we hope that our team can come over to Indonesia to meet you all, Kina and my other colleague, Heki, and so again, we wish you all healthy, and we look forward to see your design. Okay?
Yes,
So,
John.
thank you,
very
Rina.
much, John.
Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Jarrod and Abby, and I saw Eddie and Karina over there. So thank you to all, and we also wish you to come to Hong Kong, sometime.
Yeah, we will. Waiting for your
to join our program. Okay.
Okay. Bye. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everyone.
Happy Lunar Year. Yeah.
Bye.
Happy Lunar
Bye.
Year.
Happy Chinese New Year.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.